one of the all-time greats. Leads the nation in winning percentage, 86% of his games.
On their way to the Final Four. Tech coming out on top, 83-80.
I really am grateful, people, that it was a good game for women's basketball.
Coach, when you think of Leon Barmore, what first comes to mind?
Up next, a man with the highest winning percentage of any coach in the history of women's college basketball. Leon Barmore built Louisiana Tech into a national powerhouse. During his 20 years as head coach, his Lady Techsters won 87% of their games. They made 20 straight NCAA tournament appearances, 9 trips to the Final Four, and won a national title. But those achievements are just part of Leon's legacy. He's also made a tremendous impact on the lives of the women who played for him.
When I think of Leon Barmore, the first thing that comes to my mind is just obviously a great coach. He's a legend, but I'm not sure I can just say one thing comes to mind. I think he is a very private person, very successful.
Well, I'm from Ruston. I grew up here. I went to school started out at Hillcrest Elementary, went to Ruston Elementary. First class as a 6th grader in that building. Baseball was my big sport until I was about 13 or 14, and then I started being better at basketball, and that's why I still played a little baseball in high school, but not college. But the opportunities for me personally as a little baseball player growing up and a basketball player was good. Went to Ruston High School and played on 2 championship teams. We 61 and 62 back-to-back basketball state champions. I was a guard. Very successful as a team during that era. Ruston High School was. Then I came to Louisiana Tech as a walk-on. I really wanted to play here. I got a scholarship after my first year and started 3 years with Coach Scotty Robertson as a sophomore, junior, and senior. And just felt blessed to be able to do things in this town that I grew up in. I won't tell you my age, but I've only been away from here like four years. That's when I took my first job in Bastrop High School coming out of Tech. I never wanted to be anywhere else but Ruston, and I fell in love with Louisiana Tech. I'll tell you a quick story. I didn't see Louisiana Tech play men's basketball until I was like in the 8th or 9th grade. And I walked in Memorial Gym that night to watch them play. And they turned the lights out, introduced the starting lineup, and I can tell you the starting lineup, by the way, too. The spotlight came on, and they introduced Bud Fry and Ron Woodward as the guards, Joe Daigle as a forward, Ray Germany as a forward, and Jackie Moreland, whose number's retired here, come running out in that spotlight. And that just captivated me that I want to do that someday. I want to play at Tech. I want to come and run through that spotlight. But Jackie Moreland was an All-American and drafted number 1 in the pros with Detroit. But I would play with him and pick up games during the summer after I got older. But my point being, I fell in love with Tech that night. Now, the bad part of that story is I go to Tech, I start 3 years, and when I go to Tech, they put in mercury vapor lights, and they didn't have the spotlight. And I never got to run out with the lights out and the spotlight in the center of the court. But I had a great career academically and basketball-wise at Louisiana Tech.
He just loves the game of basketball, and you can't describe or say one thing about Leon Barmore. Intensity, passion, had a presence about him when he was a player, from what I was told. I know how impactful he was on the court during my playing days and my coaching days with him.
And Buddy, I'll start with you. How long have you been following us, and just what are a couple of early moments or games or players that's kind of stood out in your mind?
Well, Leon, I've been real fortunate to have covered the Lady Techsters since they started in 1974, and I guess the first thing I remember is the old crowds in Memorial Gymnasium when there wouldn't be a whole lot of fans there, but they were enthusiastic, and you had players like Jane Ellen Cook and Mickey DeMoss and Connie Coker, and I remember the Spate sisters and Charlotte Cloud, and a lot of exciting moments in that first year, going back, to the initial year the Techsters started, and like I said, really been fortunate in covering the best women's team in America. There's been a lot of great moments.
What is something, when you look at the program and the ladies, what are two or three things that just stand out in your mind, Buddy?
Well, I think the type of athletes the Techsters recruit, you have a high quality of individual, not only a great athlete, but a good person and a good student. But above all, I think it's the pride of winning and trying to be the best.
10 years I spent in high school basketball. When I left Louisiana Tech, I went to Bastrop for 4 years, and I came back and took Coach Garner's place at Ruston High, who had coached me. And I was there 6 years before I came to Tech. And all the time in the back of my mind, I was trying to really be a men's coach on the college level, basketball men's coach on the college level. And really, as a player, I dreamed about playing at Tech. And then later, in my mind, I wanted to be the head men's basketball coach at Louisiana Tech. So Ms. Hogue hired me out of Ruston High to come when she and Dr. Taylor started the women's basketball program. And by the way, I owe a lot to Sonia Hogue, and I owe a lot to F.J. Taylor. They were both really great to me. But I came over with the intention of coaching with Sonia a couple of years, maybe get a shot at the men's. And really, back in 77, 78 in there, most girls around the country were shooting little set shots, and they'd move the ball, and there wasn't a lot of great athletic girls. But when I came here, we played for the national championship like my third year here, and won it like my maybe fourth or fifth year here. But the point being, Angela Turner, Jennifer White, Pam Kelly, Janice Lawrence, all of a sudden these girls were playing at a level that I didn't think they would be playing at. And I started really enjoying it. Plus, to be honest with you, I applied a couple of times, but we started winning, and Dr. Taylor felt like I should stay with the women, and I'm kind of glad I did because it turned out very good. But mainly due to the fact that we were winning plus playing at a level of women's basketball that I didn't think possible. People from a distance might have thought, well, do they get along? We got along great. She treated me well. She probably, I don't even remember a time when I would make a suggestion basketball-wise that she didn't agree with me. And I will quickly tell you, I don't think there's ever been anybody, maybe Pat Summitt, that was a better recruiter than Sonia Hogue. And she, at that time, Ruston had never seen anything like that. And we started filling up Memorial Gym with 5,000 to 6,000 people with a waiting line outside. And then when we came over here, we filled it up several times. But I've got to just give Dr. Taylor credit and Sonia credit for really promoting it and wanting it to be good. We went to Madison Square Garden and played. We went to Vegas and played, Hawaii to play. But to answer your question, Sonia and I loved each other, and I really give her a lot of credit for my success.
The first thing that comes to my mind when you talk about Lady Techsters Basketball is the early 80s. That era of women's basketball, Louisiana Tech was dominant. Nobody beat us. We had battles with USC, and that's about the only team that beat us during that time. I think our win streak was broken by Old Dominion, but at that time, we were the Connecticut of women's basketball.
I think if you talk to coaches, especially, my age and older, that were in the game when he was in it, some of the younger generation doesn't quite understand that. But I say this all the time, Coach Barmore is Gino before Gino. And you talk to him, I can remember getting, after my first year at Northwestern State that we won the conference tournament, went to the NCAA tournament, I got a note from Gino, handwritten note, and he talked about, I knew you'd be successful after having played for a legend. And, something like that meant a lot to me, but it showed the amount of respect that, arguably, the greatest coach in college basketball history is saying that about Coach Barmore. So he's just ingrained in the fabric of our game. And I think if anybody is a historian or studies the game of women's basketball, knows the mark that he's had on it. And when you look at his numbers, they're just incredibly ridiculous. That winning percentage that he ended his career as the highest, coach winning percentage-wise, men's or women's college basketball, it's unbelievable. It's something that won't be done again. Gino surpassed that at this point. But I think the time frame that he did it in and the era that he did it in and where he did it makes it that much more special.
Leon Barmore is presented by the head coach of the University of Tennessee, Hall of Famer Pat Summitt.
Before I introduce Leon, let me take you to Ruston, Louisiana, home of the Lady Techsters. Early in my coaching career, we started a series which we continue today. But when we went to Ruston and we took the bus to the gym, we got off the bus, and I'm always the last one to get off the bus, and people are out scalping tickets. It's a sellout. And there was this elderly couple saying, 2 tickets, please. And I looked over at the lady and I said, would you like 2 tickets? She goes, yes, ma'am, and I'll give you $50 for them. And I knew better than to take her money. And I said, oh, no, ma'am, you can have my tickets. I said, they gave me my tickets. She said, thank you so much. We go in, and I mean standing room only. I think the small gym probably seated about 3,500 people, and over 6,000 managed to get inside. Nothing legal about that. As the game started, and they all are standing up and chanting, and I've never been in an environment like this as a young coach. All of a sudden, I am hearing this shrill voice in my ear. And then I'm hearing this obnoxious man make comments about our play. I turned around, and guess who? The young couple that I gave tickets to. Now, I never will give away any more tickets to any Lady Techsters fans, but I learned a lot about how dedicated and appreciative they are for their Lady Techsters and for the coaches there. And when you fast forward 20 years with Leon Barmore, the players say it all.
The old Memorial Gym is still one of my favorite places because we would, like I said, I think it seats about 5,000. And they would line up at 5:30 for a 7:30 game or whatever. And I'll tell this story. We recruited Kim Mulkey. She comes up for her visit, and we're playing UCLA. And in Memorial Gym, they had them just 6 and 8 deep under the goal and all over the place. And so it was a great recruiting tool then, packed house. We came over here, and it was a good timing because in '84, we played USC in Cheryl Miller in the very first game in here, and then of course E.J. Lee and ULM, or Northeast at the time, they were very good, and we packed this place. It was the right move to make, and a beautiful facility, and it still is after all these years. And my one regret is those 2 championship teams in 80 and 81 and 81 and 82, Pam Kelly, Angela Turner never got to play in here, and I really wish they had been able to play. I didn't realize this till someone told me a few weeks ago that our record in here during my coaching was 300 wins and 15 losses. Now, you got to give some fans some credit for that, because I'm sure there was some tight games with Tennessee, and then we played all the good teams. Tennessee came in here, Connecticut came in here, Texas came in here, USC came in here. So I'm sure that without these fans that really love the program, we might not have pulled some of those games out.
The Louisiana Tech women's basketball fans were absolutely phenomenal. They sold me as a high school senior that this is the place I need to be. I went and watched, and on my official visit, and it was at the time it was Old Memorial Gym, they never sat down until the opposing team scored. Now you got to know that's a long period of time because that's how good they were or we were. And I felt like I told my parents on the drive back to Hammond, I said, I felt like I was at a revival. I did. People were standing, young kids, old kids. I mean, you couldn't find a seat in the place. And I thought, I've never seen anything like this in my life. And it continued that entire time I was at Louisiana Tech. We go to the Thomas Assembly Center, a nicer arena, a bigger place. And I'm thinking they're not going to fill this place up. And they did.
Well, our program was built around, from the standpoint of the fans, they were from, a lot of them from Ruston, but we also had fans from Arcadia, Homer, Farmville, the smaller towns. So all of a sudden we're playing some big time basketball and they are really coming in droves to see us play. Now, when you bring in Pat Summitt in Tennessee, that just elevates it even more. I remember playing the Olympic team in here, and we almost beat them. Raquel Spurlock fouls out with like 5 minutes to go, and we were ahead 2 or 3 points. And they ended up barely beating us, and it was a packed gym. If you're going to be the best, you got to play the best and bring them in. And I remember playing Tennessee one time in here, and I think they played like at 10 o'clock at night so we could be on ESPN, and the students just came out in droves. And I don't think we could have done that if the name had not been Tennessee. If we'd have been playing some smaller team or not, lesser team, without naming anybody certainly, they wouldn't have stayed up till 10, 11 o'clock to see us play. But the big names, I remember Jody Conrad at Texas said she would never come to Ruston until they built Hilton. Well, we didn't build a Hilton, but the NCAA playoff center here one year, and we beat her right here.
No athletic contest would be complete without the fans, and the Lady Techsters have plenty. One of the most active booster clubs around is the Lady Techster Tip-Off Club. Each year in early fall, the club hosts a covered dish supper to welcome the Lady Techsters back to school. This year, an overflow crowd filled the floor of the Thomas Assembly Center to meet the team and hear comments from Coach Leon Barmore. The first day of practice, the Tip-Off Club hosted a pancake breakfast during the team's morning practice session. Again, hundreds of fans came by to show their support of the Lady Techster team.
If you look at 1977, 78, in there, the 4th or 5th year of the program, everybody, I'm sure, thought, they'd win a few games, and they never expected. All of a sudden, you're getting something you didn't expect. And a lot of these fans that started coming, some of them, on the ladies' side, may have played a little high school ball at Bernice or Farmville or Homer or Haynesville or Arcadia, but they flocked into Ruston. And I know this for a fact, there was so many of those fans that didn't have a lot of money, but they sacrificed. They'd be at Old Dominion watching us play in Norfolk for the national championship. They could be in Eugene, Oregon. Somehow they pooled their money together. They got on buses, they got on planes, and they were right there supporting us. And the product was so good. And I remember Mr. Green used to stand up, I love the Lady Techsters with that big sign. And June and Leonard Green, they never missed a game. I remember we lost up in Connecticut one year, and I was going back to the bus, and it was cold. God, it was cold. Well, I didn't even know they were at the game. June and Leonard Green in Storrs, Connecticut.
Mr. Green, we got a question for you. What is the most exciting Lady Techsters game that you've ever seen?
The most exciting Lady Techsters game that I have ever seen was when you all played in Tacoma, Washington, and beat Auburn.
And where were you seated at the time?
Where was I seated?
Yep. Were you in Tacoma or were you in
I was in Tacoma.
All right.
I was right there.
It was something that nobody expected, and all of a sudden we go out, back up and tell you this quick story. Jane Ellen Cook's playing, and nobody really knew us. We go to California. We play 3 games. We beat Long Beach, USC, and we beat UCLA, who was the defending national champs. Well, that put us right there. And we came back home and those fans like you're talking about, God, we all of a sudden beat 3 big major schools because Long Beach was really good back then. And so it all of a sudden snowballed. It'd be like somebody, when I was growing up, we had a show on TV called The Millionaire. Guy'd knock on the door and the guy'd come to the door, wife, hand him a check for $1 million. He'd go, God, $1 million? We handed this community and this surrounding area something they never thought they'd have. And they latched on to it, appreciated it, and enjoyed it.
Techsters went out to the West Coast, I think it was 1978-79 season, and beat UCLA and beat 2 other highly regarded teams out there. I told people at the time, I said, we have got to start covering the Lady Techsters because they are good. And so they assigned me to cover the games, and I remember one of my most memorable moments was that first Final Four in Greensboro, North Carolina, and they had the pep band there. Dr. Taylor was there, and I said, well, these people I think are going to be serious about having a good program. And it was memorable also because I think all of you starters were from right around here in Louisiana, within 100 miles of Ruston.
I always wanted to be a Lady Techster. I grew up going to all the games and watching the girls, and my mom had, all my mom's family was part of Louisiana Tech, and it was always a dream. And so when I did start to see him in the stands, his coaching staff, Nell Fortner was in the stands a good bit, I mean, my heart would start racing. I was very excited because it's just the legendary Leon Barmore. I mean, who wouldn't want to play for someone who was such a mastermind in the basketball world and so much respect?
I can remember that first team meeting. Everybody's a little nervous as a freshman, and you walk into that first team meeting, and he's obviously the last one that walks in the room, and everybody sits up really straight, and your heart's pounding, and you're nervous, and he immediately, has that inflection in his voice and catches everybody's attention. He just has a way with his words where he may repeat a phrase a certain way, and obviously got your attention with that. And then when you step on the court, he brought out the best in you every single day. Some days he challenged you beyond anything you thought you could possibly do. And there were days where I can think back now and still remember some exact phrases he said to me 20 plus years later that still ring true. But so much of who I am as a coach and as a person and as a mom was because of the discipline and the daily expectations of being excellent.
Coach Barmore and I are both very competitive, and that can sometimes lead to disaster or it can lead to success. When you're on the same team, I tend to think it leads to success because we're all trying to do the same thing together for our team. I loved playing for Coach Barmore, but I had miserable days. I had homesick days. I had days I wanted to start. I had days he would take me out of the game and I didn't agree with him. But it made me a better player. It as to this day, made me a better coach. You're born with a competitiveness, and my competitiveness I'll never apologize for. And when I went to Louisiana Tech, I wanted to play with the best in the country, and I had the opportunity to play with some of the most unbelievable players, and they made me who I was as a player.
He just knew when someone needed an extra hug or an extra boost. In fact, there was one point in my career, it was my sophomore year. I probably shouldn't tell the story, I don't know, but I was on the bench next to him, so all the point guards sat next to him, and we're playing one of my former high school teammates. And she starts, and she has averaging 12, 14 points a game. I can't remember what it was. And I'm not starting, I'm not playing as much as she was on the other side of the scoreboard. And he looked over at me and he said, Katie, let me tell you what, you're so important in this program. You have no idea how important you are because of what you do day in and day out. We are where we are because of your effort and your heart in this program. Now, you could be that big fish in that little pond that your teammate right there is like, but you're part of something way more special than that, and she'll never have that experience. And I'm so grateful that you're here on this program. And little did he know that very night before, I'd gotten a phone call from my dad. We always talk basketball with my dad. And I told my dad that night, I was like, I'm just really frustrated. I'm tired. I'm not playing the time I want to play, that my expectations are a little bit, higher. And I was a little frustrated at that point. And we just briefly talked about, well, is this where you need to be? And I was like, I kind of just dismissed it really quick. And of course, the next night he says that. And I called my dad after the game. I said, you're never going to believe what he told me on the bench tonight. And it was those kind of things. He just has that knack. He just knows when someone needs that extra hug, and he's going to just love on you, no matter what player you are.
Well, he had a way. He probably won't like this, but I'll go ahead and say it anyway. I want to say all his buddies told me later when I was coaching with him that his nickname growing up was Catfish, because he had those eyes and they would bulge out, and he would just give you that look. And that was just Coach Barmore, but all great coaches have that. Pat Summitt had that stare. That stare didn't intimidate or scare me. Now, it might have scared a referee or intimidated a referee, but you just grow used to his mannerisms, and it didn't bother me in the least. That's Coach Barmore. That's his intensity and his passion and his love for winning.
I'll never forget. My freshman year, we were in Bahamas, and I don't even remember who we were playing. I don't remember, but I know that we were killing some poor team. And it was the last part of the game, which means I was a freshman, so I was in the game, and we were beating them really bad, and the referees were not calling fouls. And to the point where he calls timeout, and the referees were standing right there during the timeout, and he looks at that referee, gives him the stare, and then gets even more mad because the referee just kind of ignores him, and he starts charging at that referee out the door of the facility. Of course, he gets kicked out and ejected, but he came back in the locker room after that game and says, I don't care what the time and score is. Y'all are my people. I'm going to fight for you no matter what. But I know the referee had a piece of that stare. But no, we all laugh about that stare because players know that we got to straighten up and do more because we got more in us.
I could have a few nightmares about that. I think my players would probably say I might have a little bit of that myself, but there was just and I think certain personalities, it affected you differently. I had teammates that they were oblivious to it. And then there were some of us that it would melt you. And I think officials probably saw that. Assistant coaches saw that. Other staff members, maybe some SIDs and radio guys at some point felt that. But, and I think it came from a place where he just demanded excellence from everybody around him. And it wasn't anything in terms of, being hateful or, just really, really crude. It was, he wanted things done a certain way, and he had a way to get your attention without even using anything verbally. He could just look, and we knew what that stare meant, and we quickly got ourselves in line.
He was someone that demanded so much respect, but yet such care and gentle at the same time. He just had that way about him. That's the type of leader he was. No matter if you were an All-American or if you're the last person off the bench, he's going to treat you with the same exact respect and fight for you no matter what. And that was something that I knew that even in the recruiting process that I was going to be taken care of. And that's just the type of person he was.
Coach Barmore is very intense on the court, but Coach Barmore got the best out of people. And I just know that his intensity made you want to please him. It wasn't intensity that was just noise. It was intensity with purpose. It was intensity with teaching. It was intensity that made us a better player and us a better team. I had no problem with it. Now, there were days that I might not have liked some of the things he said or some of the things that he did, but that's all part of coaching.
When I became on his staff, I was actually at Ole Miss, and he called and said, hey, you want to come back? When Kim left, I said, absolutely, I'm there, no brainer. And because I knew I wanted to be a part of the program that I just loved dearly. In my heart, he still had that same intensity about him, and I was always sitting up straighter in my chair. I mean, he demanded so much from his staff, and but also gave us some freedom to do our job and not micromanage and look over our shoulder. But yet he knew that I was going to do the job I needed to do for him. And it was nervous. It was nerve-wracking because he was, he'd been here, done this for so many years, and here I am new, trying to learn different ropes, different side of it. And the one thing I thought that was very interesting as being on staff was I even looked over at him, and I looked at him and I asked him, I said, did y'all talk about these players like we're talking about them all the time? Did y'all talk about us like that all the time? He could like every day. It was just, you were all I thought about. Who's playing well, who needs a pickup, who needs to be stroked a little bit today, or who needs to be ridden a little harder. And I didn't realize that aspect of it until I got up behind the scenes. And I also kind of knew his tendencies of what he wanted, his expectations out of his staff and his players.
Kim, great job running the attack today. Were you a little worried when you got down 8?
No, sir. Coach Barmore always tells us if somebody jumps on you real quick, you got 40 minutes left to play, and if you just execute real well and come out and be calm and not let the lead worry you, then it'll come back.
Kim Mulkey was chosen the nation's finest small player by the U.S. Basketball Hall of Fame, was the Naismith Small Player of the Year, was the Louisiana Outstanding Amateur Athlete, made first-team NCAA Academic All-American, and won the NCAA Postgraduate Scholarship Award. Lawrence and Mulkey would make one more trip to Los Angeles in 1984 when they represented the United States in the games of the 23rd Olympiad, winning the gold medal in women's basketball. It was a great way to bring an end to the first decade of Lady Techsters Basketball.
Well, the first time I saw Kim play she was in like the 10th grade. And I went to Hammond to watch her play, and when she came running out, and she won 4 state championships, an average of about 38 points a game. I could tell right off she had charisma, she had a drive to win, she was just a competitor. And when she came here, she didn't start her first year. She played behind Jennifer White, but probably played just as many minutes. And then we won 2 championships with her. We went to 4 Final Fours with her. And, of course, she coached with me 16 years. I truly love Kim and really admire what she has done with her playing, her academics, her coaching. She's a total package. And I really give her credit for when she left me and went to Baylor, she really blossomed as a head coach. And she will do very well at LSU, too.
I was never going to be a coach. My degree from Louisiana Tech is in business administration. After playing in the '84 Olympics and graduating summa cum laude from Louisiana Tech, I was awarded a postgraduate scholarship from the NCAA, could go to the school of my choice. I chose to stay at Louisiana Tech. I was sitting in class, and in the middle of class, campus police came and motioned for me to come outside the classroom, and I did, and was very nervous. I thought it would be something terrible. And it ended up being that Dr. F.J. Taylor wanted them to tell me to come see him on the 16th floor of Wiley Tower when class was over. And so I did. And when I got up there, he said Sanja Hogue had resigned and that he wanted to give Leon the job, but that he wanted me to be on Leon's staff. And I said, no coach wants a president to choose who their coaches will be. And I said, no, I'm not interested, Dr. Taylor. I said, I'm going to get on these corporate jets and fly the world after I'm done with my master's. And he wouldn't take no for an answer. And then he obviously talked to Coach Barmore, and Coach Barmore convinced me that he wanted me on his staff. So the rest is history. I said I'd give it a shot, and here I am, 37 years later, having been in coaching. So those two men obviously knew more about what I was supposed to do than I did. The hard part was I now needed to go from being his student athlete to being not on his level, but I needed to talk to him in a different role than I did as a player, and I had to grow into that. He threw the books at me when I walked in the office at 23 years of age and basically said, go recruit players. And that's what I did because I was the first one he hired on his staff. And so I kind of taught myself how to recruit. It wasn't anybody in the office that could teach me. And then he hired other coaches. So just, you want to please him. You want to bring him the best players. You want to work hard for him. The coaching on the floor was not a problem. I just learned everything that he could teach for 4 years. That was the easy part. The hard part was recruiting. You take recruiting personal. You invest all this time and energy into these prospects, and when you don't get them, it's hurtful. So that was the first thing that was an adjustment. I didn't know how long I could do that because I don't like rejection. But you learn to pick yourself back up. And we had a remarkable run when I was an assistant and associate head coach with him.
I don't think you need to look any further. If you are wanting the best of both worlds, you want a good education, you want to play for the best coach in the country, you want to play on the best basketball team in the country, then Louisiana Tech is the place for you.
I think we were so much alike because we were very organized. We had a practice. We weren't going to fool around. We walked out here and it wasn't no, play horse for 30 minutes or, shoot around and somebody turned on some music and we danced for 10 minutes. We came out with some intensity, and then both of us had this in us, make everybody accountable. I mean, if Janice Lawrence was scoring 10 and she could score 15, let's get you at 15. Let's pull out the most out of you that we can possibly pull out of you as a player, and that way when you do that, you're going to build a good team. And it was always about team to start with. It really was, but I just always felt like the players are looking at me, how organized is he, how prepared is he, and they responded. And I've heard so many good comments through the years after I quit coaching about, Coach, thank you for being so hard on me. At the time, they probably didn't like it, but to answer your question about my style of coaching, I wanted to win. I was a competitor. And I wanted everybody around me to feel the same way.
I think as coaches, we want to win, and we're competitive. And I thought I was competitive until I looked through the program at some of Leon's photographs. Take time to do that. That man was intense. But I love to compete against him. I told a coach one time, someday I'm going to stay in the game long enough to beat that man. He has that winning percentage, and I know I contributed at least 10 plus to the win column. But he brought out the best, not only in his players and his staff, but he brought out the best of a lot of us coaches and a lot of the programs because he set a standard, a high standard. They played with structure and they played with a sense of urgency, and they forced you to bring it every possession. That's a reflection of a great coach. But what I've learned about Leon since, and many, many times, we eliminated each other one year or the other in postseason. But we never lost sight of the value of a friendship and a relationship with a competitor in our game.
I think without Pat Summitt in Tennessee, I don't think I could have achieved personally what I did, and I don't think Tech could have either, and I'll give you some reasons why. When we first started playing Tennessee, Pat Summitt was only about 24, 25 years old. We beat them, not many people realize this, we beat them like 10 out of about the first 11 times. And I never will forget, and I learned from Pat on this, every time of those 10 losses, she would be very cordial to us. She would congratulate us. But it was killing her. It was eating her inside. And she made a comment, well, we got to get better post players because they got Pam Kelly and they got Janice Lawrence, and she went out and did that. But we never played each other and not finish with a deep appreciation for each other as coaches and program. And I just know that every time we played, it was a national type game, nationwide. It brought the best out of each coach and out of each team.
Coach Barmore and Pat Summitt are my mentors. I miss Pat Summitt dearly. They taught the game at a level that other coaches weren't doing. They challenged coaches. I'm not sure today that either one of them could do some of the things they did back then because of the way society is. But it made the two programs successful. I remember during my time with Coach Barmore as a player, Tennessee never beat us. And then I went on to play for Pat in the '84 Olympics, and she told me that she was not going to get out of coaching until she could beat Louisiana Tech. And I thought that was one of the highest compliments that she could pay to Coach Barmore.
we had a little deal with Stephen F. for 2 or 3 years. We had a little thing with Texas for 3 or 4 years, but we had this with Pat for 25 years. And also the point being, a lot of teams the big teams after we started beating them wouldn't come here. She never failed to help us and come down here and play us, and we would go there and play. So loved her and still miss her to this day.
They get a shot off. Tiffany Woosley, no, that won't go. Louisiana Tech has upset the University of Tennessee.
Unbelievable, that man right there, and what he just orchestrated after a 34-point loss in December.
Leon Barmore, what a turnaround his Lady Techsters have done here at the Mid-East Regional Semifinal. He has reason to be excited as his Lady Techsters, the number 4 seed, have upset the number 1 seed in the nation, winning 71-68.
The last game in the AIAW days, we won that national championship. And then in 1982, the NCAA took over the women's game, and we were the very first national championship under the NCAA umbrella. I just remember, back to back. We didn't view it as 2 different associations. It was just the highest association at the time, and the excitement of what we did at Louisiana Tech, you can't compare it to anything. So back to back was exciting. But I just remember the Louisiana Tech fans and how humble they were, how appreciative they were, how much they loved us. It was a time in North Louisiana like none other I had ever been a part of. And it's amazing that little Louisiana Tech could play with the big dogs. And I attribute that to Dr. F.J. Taylor. He founded the program. He was a visionary. He hired Sanja Hogue. And then you have to also tell people Sanja Hogue was a visionary because she knew her strengths and weaknesses were. And she hired Leon Barmore. And the 2 of those guys made it work. And I'm not sure many coaches could do that nowadays because of egos and who's going to step on whose toes, but they made it work. Ms. Hogue would recruit us, and Coach Barmore would coach us.
Well, the first couple, especially the first one, and even the fact of being the second championship was probably the best team that's ever been here. Even though they lost the game, they're like 35-1. But we had beaten people through the year, and I just felt like we were the best team in the nation. So it would have been kind of a downer if we'd have lost, to be honest with you. And to do that, we beat Tennessee and Eugene, Oregon on national TV for the first championship. And here's Russ and Louisiana again, and Louisiana Tech hanging with Tennessee and those people. And you have to experience to know that it just makes you just feel great all over. It makes you feel great that so many people are enjoying this, And the players were really excited, as you well can expect. But as a coach, you're just on cloud 9. I mean, you just and you're making your school. And I can't overemphasize this. I got a good story on this. When I first came over, the first 2 or 3 years, we would get on an airplane, and the Lady Techsters from Louisiana Tech, and they would know who we were, and somebody'd say, we're from Louisiana Tech, and they'd say, hey, that's where old Terry Bradshaw's from. And they were right. And Terry Bradshaw is a great name for Louisiana Tech, but I promise you this, after we won a national championship, we'd get on a plane and say, we're from Louisiana Tech. Oh, that's where those Lady Techsters are from. And Bradshaw is too. So my point being, it made you as a coach and one of the leaders of the team with Ms. Hogue during that era feel so good that we're putting Louisiana Tech on the map, along with all the players and fans. I mean, it really did. That's where the Lady Techsters are from.
And we're back once again in Norfolk. Sandra Hogue is with us. Leon Barmore is with us. Leon's already asked me the first question at the news conference yesterday. I said, What is your team going to do when it gets close in the game? And I guess you showed us there in the first half.
Well, Frank, we sure did. We showed a lot of class by being behind there early. Our kids were trying, and things, you know, Cheney State was playing very well. But I felt like with Rodman coming off the bench, giving us a spark, and Jennifer gave us a little spark there, and then we kept our composure, and I think we showed what we do if we were behind.
Sandra, what do you think?
I think it was a tremendous game. I think it's one of the best games we've played all year. And as the press conference went yesterday, they did ask us how we would do in a tight situation. And gosh, we were down 8 points there at one point, and I think they really kept their composure. And again, I think it goes back to experience. Being here at the tournament for the 4th year, there's nothing that can replace the experience.
Leon, early on when you were down 2 points, 22-20, you came back, you scored 20 straight points. And I think really because you moved the ball inside so well.
Well, I think one thing we told our kids, I thought one of the big things of the game was the offensive boards. Either way, they get the offensive boards, we lose. We get the offensive boards, we win. Now, I didn't think that we were allowing them on the board, but we were not getting but one shot. We got the ball inside better. We tried to swing it back from the ball side to Lawrence and Kelly, and we also got some offensive rebounds. And I think, to me, really, that was probably the key during that stretch. Plus, the press just once or twice fired us up by us getting a couple of buckets on it.
When I left high school, I scored a lot of points and won 4 state championships. Which one was more important to me? Those 4 state championships, not scoring the points. So when I made my decision to go to Louisiana Tech, I wanted to go somewhere that could help me win championships. And I will never forget going there, and other college recruiters said, you're going to a program that's returning 3 freshmen and 2 sophomores from the previous year, and that team made it to a Final Four. You're never going to get to play there. Well, I accepted that as a challenge. And I signed at Louisiana Tech, and it's not fun coming as a freshman with all the accolades that I had, and all of a sudden you're not on the floor when the ball's tipped. But I learned so much about how to handle that situation. I was okay with it because I was getting the same number of minutes as the starters were. But at that age, 18 years old, you think if you're the best player, you need to start. And that's not necessarily true. Your best 5 don't always start games. As a coach, you evaluate your team and decide who needs to be on the floor in certain situations. And I thought they used me as a spark, a plug, for lack of a better term, my freshman year. And Deborah Rodman and myself, we were the ones that came off the bench. But our team, honestly, you could have taken our top 10 players and they could have been ranked number 1 and number 2 in the country. We were that good.
This story sets the example of why the Lady Techsters was successful. I really believe this. Pam Kelly came here just like Kim came here. Kim averaged 38 points in high school. Pam started and was all-state, all-American at Caldwell Parish High School. And she comes here as a freshman just like Kim. She didn't start. And both of these kids could have left because, hey, look, I was everything Pam was in high school, and she didn't start. And but she was averaging, believe it or not, she was averaging 20 points a game, leading our team. And about February of that year, we're about, 15-0, 15-1, or 16-1. And a sports writer asked Pam Kelly, said, Pam, you're the best player on the team. You're averaging 20 points. You're leading the team in rebounds and points. What do you think about not starting? The man he won't start you. And Pam made one of the truly great statements I've ever been said as a coach in my presence. It was, if Coach Barmore don't think I should start, I don't either. Now that statement told me we had something great in Pam, and also I think a lot of those other players felt the same way. And that's why they reached a height that was, in her 4 years, unbelievable. If Coach Barmore don't think I should start, I don't either.
I think if you talk to him, he would say, I had some really great players. And yes, he did. He did a fantastic job of assembling a staff that could bring in some of the best talent in the country. But as a player, we would all say, and as I talked to former teammates, even still today, we would all say that he had a way to connect. Whether he sat around and visited with you or not, he knew what buttons to punch with each player. And so for us, we understood that. That may not be something that the outside world sees, but he just had a really unique way of connecting with you to get the best out of you. And those are conversations that we'll have, even today, as we think back to certain situations, and he'll go, well, did I really say that? Or I wasn't that hard, was I? And it's been fun for me as a coach now to go back and have those conversations with him, 20 years later when it's a completely different situation, and just kind of his mindset. But I think his ability to connect with people and not appear to be, an extroverted personality was a really unique trait he had to bring out the best in anyone around him.
Gary Blair is at Texas A&M for 20 years of how long he's been there. Well, he started out of high school, came here as a coach under us, and look where he's elevated himself to. Of course, we talked about Kim Nell Fortner, who I just love to death. She was here in the 90s for 6 years, and then she coached the Olympic team. She's now at Georgia Tech coaching. She was at Auburn. Christy Curry, who's at Alabama. Of course, Brooke Story is here, coach the Lady Techsters. In the back of my mind, I know that what they saw and did here for me, they learned too. As I learned from them, they learned from me. And it's just Scotty Robertson, who I played for. I learned so much from that man. I copied the best from everybody I could. And to have these coaches out there, Kurt Butke, who passed away in a plane crash. Well, he worked here for a while, then went on and was coach at Oklahoma State. And I'm sure there's some I'm forgetting, but it makes you feel good to know that they coached under you, they learned from you, and then they went out and was successful like they have been.
I think when you look at Coach Barmore's coaching tree and the people that have been a part of this program that are now, across the country, impacting, young women, whether it's in college basketball or in different areas, it's pretty impressive. Not only did he have great players, but he hired really good coaches and allowed them to do their jobs. And then they were able to go out and start their own programs and have a lot of success. And if you talk, when we were going and doing that, doing some of the fundraising for the statue, and, I talked to a few former coaches that had worked for him, and they were on board as quick as possible because they knew that, just like me, every opportunity that we've had in the profession started with him.
Father, it's indeed an honor to play this game of basketball. We thank you for the talents of these young ladies. We thank you for the opportunity that Louisiana Tech has given all of us to be either a coach, a manager, or a player. Help us tonight, God, to play so hard and play together. And if we do this, I know in some way we have glorified your name and we're pleasing in your eyes. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Here we go.
There is a softer side to Coach Barmore that people don't see. There's a softer side to me that people don't see. I think Coach Barmore is very much selective on who is in his inner circle. And the reason he is, I think that we have a trust problem as coaches. We want those in our circle to love us regardless of what we do on the basketball court. And I just think the way Coach Barmore was raised and how he had to scratch and claw and work his way into a scholarship, where he came from. And I think that he just wants people around him to see that, but it's only certain people. And I don't think anything's wrong with that either.
Coach Barmore, to me, I'll never forget this. As a freshman, my grandfather passed away, and I believe it was the first weekend of practice. And I'd asked him. I was really nervous to ask for the time off for that, and because I didn't want to miss anything, and of course I did. And I go to the funeral, and it's going on. And I look back, and this is it's in Shreveport, which is an hour away from Ruston. I look back, and he's in the back pew of the church at my grandfather's funeral. Slipped in, slipped out, doesn't tell anybody. That's just how he is. And in the little things, I knew that he would write to fans or go visit them when they're not feeling good. And the little things, it's almost like he doesn't want anybody to know that soft, sweet side of him, but it's the biggest part of him that I love the most, because if you do know him, you know that big heart is there.
Get him on the golf course, and he's competitive on the golf course, but just outside, seeing him with Sophie and Ellie, seeing him with Shannon when I played, and being around, their family in those settings was just certainly different than being on the court. He came to my wedding, after we, finished playing, graduate, I worked for a few years, and just those special moments. He would come watch my teams when I coached at other universities, and it's a relationship that, yes, he was extremely hard on us and he was tough on us and he brought out the best in us, but there was such a huge level of respect and admiration for how he went about it, who he was, and what he did for us. And I know that every opportunity that I've had as a professional started when he offered me a scholarship, when I was a young girl, and I'm eternally grateful for that. But most people don't see that about him. He can laugh and joke and have a good time. He'll text me something funny when he knows I need it. He'll text me after a tough loss and just check on me. He'll come by the office, and those are the things that people don't see and that he doesn't really want them to see, because he's just himself and he's his own person. He always has been, and I think that's something that makes him very unique. He's not trying to be somebody that he's not.
He's considered to have one of the most knowledgeable basketball minds in the country. In 1988, he was named Coach of the Year. To many people, he's the competitive taskmaster, focused only on the game in front of him. The pressure to win in college athletics, the hectic travel schedule during the season, and the worry of recruiting can generate more than just a little stress. But there's another side of Leon few people get to see.
Leon and I started off as very good friends. We would just go play a lot of intramural sports together, and eventually, it became a little bit more than friends. We have a daughter, Shannon, who is a senior at Ruston High and is a Bearcat Belle, and she at one time was a basketball player.
I think what I've really appreciated about Rachel through the years is the fact that I'm such a high-strung type coach, and Rachel is a very low-key person, and when I come home frustrated, she's always had the real knack or the ability to help me get through those tough moments. And if she'd have been high-strung too, I don't know how we would have survived, but she's been very good for me in that respect. And I know I'm on the road a lot and I take a lot of trips, but it may sound like I'm henpecked, but I call home every day. I call home simply because the two most important people in my life are Rachel and my daughter Shannon. So it's been a very good marriage and relationship, the best I guess you could be when you consider the job I do have and the pressures that go with coaching and the time involved away from home. But I have certainly learned the last few years to leave most of it at the office and not bring it home.
Well, God, I'm glad you asked that question, because I have so much love for Rachel, and I have so much love for Shannon, who gave me Sophie and Ellie. So when I retired, they were born, and I remember them being like about 3 months old and Pat Summitt coming into play, and she held those babies, and I got pictures of that. And they're going to go to Louisiana Tech this year as freshmen at Louisiana Tech, and they're unbelievably talented. But I've got the best son-in-law a guy could have in Carroll Polyak. I've been retired now, I guess 18, 19 years, or what it is. And we've got to go to Disney World 6 or 7 times. We go to Florida every summer. My retirement has been so good because of them. And I just have Rachel is a perfect coach's wife. I'll tell you this quick story. We're playing in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Venus Lacey's on the team. We win the game like 10 or 12 points. Should have won by 30. And I'm so upset because we won, but we didn't win right. So I wasn't going to feed them. I said, get on the bus. We're going to Ruston, which is about a 5-6 hour. Well, Venus Lacey, and this is before cell phones. Venus Lacey gets back and gets off the bus and calls Rachel, my wife, and says, you know what he did to us tonight? He wouldn't feed us, Ms. Barmore. I walk in the house and Rachel gets all over me. And why didn't you feed those girls? I said, who told you? And I'm going to tell you. Well, I found out it was Venus. But I think that story kind of tells you this. The players knew who to go to. And Rachel has just been so great through the years. I couldn't be more blessed and love my family more than anything in the world.
Miss Rachel is a saint. She is an angel, and we always loved having her on road trips. He was a little more kind, gentle soul when she was around. I'll tell you a quick story. We felt awful after the fact, but we thought it would be a great idea to go roll his yard with toilet paper. And so we got our whole team. It was probably one of the most fun moments that we had with that group. And we drove in a manager's back of his truck, and we got there late at night, and we rolled his yard. We were leaving to go to Las Vegas the next day on a road trip, and it had rained. And we got on the bus, and he was not too pleased with us. And we felt awful because Miss Rachel and Shannon were left behind to clean that up. And so we had to apologize to her. But Miss Rachel, always there with a hug, a big smile on her face. I've never seen her angry or upset. And just, she was a mother to all of us away from home. And I know she was a great balance for him and a great support for Coach Barmore.
Sophie and Ellie are the loves of his life other than Rachel and Shannon. He's so proud of them, and it's cute to watch him send me text messages talking about them, and I tell him he needs to brag on them more. Super intelligent girls, very creative and very artsy. They played tennis, but they're very much the loves of his life. And I don't know what he would do. I know he loves Rachel and he loves Shannon, but those two girls, they're attached to his heart.
As head coach on a game night, Leon Barmore walks into the Thomas Assembly Center for the final time in his legendary career. It's a second-round matchup with 9th-seeded Vanderbilt, but thoughts on the faithful here are with their head coach. It was just 3 days ago he shocked the college basketball world by making this announcement at the end of a routine press conference before his team's first-round game with Alcorn State. He said he was stepping down.
Today I gave all I have. I think I got one more run at the national championship game, and that's it. I love this school.
I got to be very honest. When we joined the WAC, I did it for a couple of years, but it took us to places that just was so hard to get to, and I was getting up in age. I was like 55, 56 or what it was. And I was getting tired. I'd done it for 23 years at a time, and I came back and did a couple of years when that took place. I know it's very sad for me, but I know that I was at the point where if I couldn't give Louisiana Tech everything I had, I don't need to be around. And I felt like I was getting tired. It was a sad day for me because in the back of my mind, I didn't know what I was going to do. I'd coached all my life, and I really enjoyed my team. But the travel had gotten to me, to be honest with you. I think Brooke and Ayanna Walker and that group, I just felt so bad for them. And I said, you know what? Dr. Renaud asked me to come back, and I came back for a couple of years. But the travel just got what I really wanted to do was when I left, don't leave the team without players. Just don't leave the Louisiana Tech where they couldn't win. And so, Cheryl Ford and that group, Kurt did a really good job with them. I regret not being able to coach a little Tasha Cream because I recruited her and she was going to be a freshman, and she turned out to be a great basketball player here. You hate to give up something good that you loved, but I had gotten pretty tired.
To watch now because Katrina Frierson, the 6'1" freshman forward from Vicksburg, Mississippi, will step to the free throw line with the entire Tech season and the legend Leon Barmore's last game potentially on her shoulders. Here's the first. Got it! She'll have another for the lead. Get back! They just got inbound. The legend lives on! much more importantly, Rachel Barmore, Leon Barmore's wife, the legendary coach at Louisiana Tech, said so long to the Thomas Assembly Center with a dramatic, heart-stopping one-point win in the second round over Vanderbilt. They're going to Kansas City, but it wasn't easy.
He came 3 years and coached with me at Baylor. I got him out of retirement. I wanted him to see that you can get on these private planes and be home quickly, and it wasn't the wear and tear on your body that was starting to take effect when you fly commercially. And gave him a good salary and told him he didn't have to worry about recruiting. I just wanted to basically thank him for what he had done for me in my career, and the best way to do that was to keep him involved in the game and kind of reward him with a good little salary and just challenge me and make me a good coach at Baylor. I think it was something that he never probably thought would happen. I think I caught him off guard, and I talked to him enough to convince him that he could come. I really think Coach Barmore would have stayed and at Baylor with me longer, but he couldn't convince Rachel to come with him. And Shannon and Sophie and Ellie and Carroll, his family, they had their jobs, and he missed them a lot. So getting 3 years out of him was miraculous in a lot of ways, if you know Coach Barmore.
Not knowing what I was going to do when I got out of coaching, and I wasn't going to sell insurance, or if I couldn't be good at something. And at that time in my life, I didn't know what to do. And so for the first 3 or 4 years, I just got so bored. And Kim called one day and said, "Coach, I want you to come over and help me." She said, "You don't have to recruit. You help me on the floor. Just coach the players on the floor." I didn't have to go, but except during basketball season, like a 5 or 6 months little deal. And so I did that for 3 years. And boy, the people in Baylor treated me so good, and I loved it. I didn't have the pressure of getting in a car and have to go recruit. And it also helped that when we had a game in Oklahoma or somewhere, we would fly on a charter flight. I remember we played an afternoon game, and I'm back in my apartment watching the 10 o'clock news. So it was set up for me, and I did it for 3 years. Brittany Griner was the 6'8" All-American player she had. I got to coach her 2 years, and that was unbelievable. I remember on Brittany Griner, the name, if anybody remembers, she was recruited, and she came, and at our very first practice, I'm standing on the goal, and she goes underneath the goal and comes back and dunks it. And I turned to Kim, and I said, "Kim, I believe we got something." And of course, she turned out to be really, and still is playing in the WNBA. But I really appreciate Kim giving me the opportunity to do that.
When I got a phone call back in May, and he asked me, he left a voicemail. He's a man of few words. But he left a voicemail that he would like for me to present him tonight. I replayed it. And then I got very emotional because I think it speaks volumes that he can compete at the highest level with the greatest intensity and remain humble in victory and defeat. He is well respected by all of those that he has touched, be it players, be it coaches, and the game of basketball. Leon, tonight I want to thank you for being not only a pioneer, but a great difference maker for the women's game. We are continuing to grow our game, but we will always remember the impact and the footprints that you left on our game. My last year, I visited there, and I'll just tell you, I know he's a great husband, a great father, but he probably is the proudest grandparent I've ever been around. He has twin daughters, Ellie and Sophie. And after our practice, I went over and made my first home visit. I hope they will not forget that. Leon, come up. You're a Hall of Famer.
I'm going to take you back real quick to 1956 when I picked up the first basketball. I was in the 6th grade. And in 1957, my mom and dad bought our first black and white TV. It was an Emerson. It changed my life totally, because when I went home and saw that black and white TV, first of all, I never thought we was going to get a TV. Other people had them, but I was kind of like you, Meadowlark. I didn't have much growing up. But I saw on that television set in 1957 Bob Cousy and the Boston Celtics. I am sitting there in this chair, and to my left are my heroes as I was growing up: Red Auerbach, Sam Jones, Casey Jones. And actually, for the next 10 or 12 years, people, I tried to pass and shoot like Bob Cousy. I tried no, I did not try to play defense like Casey Jones, because no, I could not do that. But they were the people that inspired me to play this game. And I say that with all my heart. In 61 and 62, we won 2 state championships in high school. In 1961 in Ruston, Louisiana, Willis Reed was playing 3 miles from me, and I would go see him play. He was a freshman at Grambling. He grew up in Bernice, Louisiana. At the same time, we won state in 1961. Bob Love and Lucy Jackson was playing 40 minutes for me and winning a state championship at Morehouse High. Elvin Hayes was about to begin his career at Rayville High School. I was surrounded by people that inspired me more than you'll ever know. So I went to Tech and played for Scotty Robertson at Louisiana Tech, and then in 67 I wanted to be a men's coach in high schools, where I started. I wanted to get to college, but for 10 years I tried hard in the men's game to coach the best I could to get to college and coach men's basketball. Well, in 1977, after 10 years, I never looked like I wasn't going to make it, so I joined the Louisiana Tech women's basketball program. So if I got there for a couple of years, did well, I'd become a men's coach. Well, in 1977, I went to Delta State and saw 4 teams play. Pat Summitt was playing. She played Montclair State and a girl named Carroll Blazowski. I saw Carroll Blazowski get 44 points, and for the first time, I got turned on to women's basketball. I still want to be a men's coach, but I got turned on to women's basketball, and Carroll is here tonight. Well, for 25 years, people, I stayed with women's basketball. The job at Tech came open a couple of times, and I applied, but it was the 4th or 5th year, and we'd won a national championship, and the president told me, you stay with the women.
Well, I never dreamed I'd be in this. I wanted to play at Tech, and I wanted to coach over here, but never dreamed we'd win national championships and I'd get in position to have these honors. But I will tell you that the Naismith Hall of Fame, Basketball Hall of Fame, is the highlight of my coaching, because when I went there, I went in with Robert Parrish and James Worthy and Meadowlark Lemon, and you know, it was just such an awesome thing to know that from little old Ruston, Louisiana Tech, I was in the highest level Hall of Fame you could get, and believe me, I appreciated every one of them. And I quickly realized that a lot of other people around me, Sonia and Dr. Taylor and Pam Kelly and Kim and all these people you talked about, I couldn't have been there without them. I mean, it sounds like you're trying to be modest. No, I'm not. I'm just telling the truth. They elevated me, and I hope that I elevated them. So to answer your question, the Naismith is a highlight of my coaching, other than the national championship. I'd still have to put them ahead of everything.
Yeah, I think that's something that the statue, you know, that was a long time coming. And I think when it's hard to believe that, you know, his name is not on something or, you know, we don't have that already. And it's something that as a former player, we're so proud to be able to recognize. I know it's, you know, something that he wouldn't say is, you know, super important to him, but deep down that means a ton to him. And I know to his family and Miss Rachel and Shannon and all the people that have been with him this entire journey. I know it's something extremely special, and it's something that, you know, we can, when we pull up to the TAC every day, we're going to be able to see that, and we're going to be able to tell his story for years to come, the impact that he had not only on our program, women's college basketball, and our university.
You know what? You asked me about my family a minute ago. You know what? When I'm long gone, Sophie and Ellie may get married someday and have kids, and they're going to be able to come up there and see that. That means a lot to me. But as you go outside this gym and you walk IA Stadium, or you go over to Memorial Gym, or you go to Max Limbright Center, there's nothing that really says something about the Lady Techsters. My statue outside, what I would love for people, when they see Leon Barmore, they see Lady Techsters, they see Pam Kelly, they see Janice Lawrence, they see Kim Mulkey. And I really think that down inside, that's a personal thing with me, that the Lady Techsters for 25 years that I coached, and Ms. Hogue was here 10 of those years, I think it was 10, will not be forgotten.
I am so grateful that Louisiana Tech has and donors have provided money to do a statue in honor of him. I mean, it's just a small thing that we could do for him. I just felt like we could do so much more, but I'm so glad that everyone who walks to that Thomas Assembly Center will see his statue and just hopefully remember a great memory and remember how wonderful coach he was and how great he was for this community. It's a constant reminder that we don't ever want to forget. And as a player, it just brings me chills just to think about that. That's always going to be there from October 2021 until forever.
I gave Tech everything I had. I gave Ruston High School everything I had as a player, and then when I coached there, I didn't leave anything out there. I prepared. I worked hard at it. I stayed up nights looking at scout reports or tapes to get scout reports done. I just didn't want to leave a stone unturned, and I just think I'd want people to know that that man, he gave us our best. He gave the best he had to us.
Someone that has grown up in this area and, went to Ruston High and spent time, his entire professional career, aside from, Ruston High and Bastrop, as a Louisiana Tech employee. And obviously it's something that's dear to him, but he's so prideful in what we were able to accomplish as a program and still is to this day. He'll be at baseball games, he'll be at football games, he goes and watches softball games. I can remember and this was one thing that I go back to as a student athlete. He would give me articles of, it could be Stallworth, who was playing quarterback at the time, in college, or, Tim Rattay, or it might be, somebody outside of our sport that he was really proud of, or, Troy Edwards, and he would talk to our team about what they were doing, and just that showed to me that he wasn't just concerned about his program, but he was concerned about our university, and he takes great pride in that, always has. And I think he's, hands down, probably the most important ambassador that we have for our university.
I don't know. I have a hard time talking about legacy for anybody. I think legacy is something that future generations will probably talk about. His legacy is that, in my opinion, is he put women's basketball on the map, and here's a guy that probably would tell you he never thought he'd coach women's basketball. I think the surprising part for him is that he soon realized you don't coach them any different. The only difference is the men play above the rim. You teach them the same, you coach them the same, you get on them as hard as you do the guys. And I think that was enjoyable for him, because I think sometimes on the men's side, you have a tendency to think you're going to step down to a lesser level. It's not a lesser level, it's just the physical abilities of the men play above the rim and the women play below the rim, but the game is the same.
Coach, to sum it all up, what is the impact that Coach Barmore has had on your life and your career?
Oh, now, you don't have enough time for me to tell you all of those things. The impact started when I played for him. I thought I knew everything about the game, and actually I knew very little about the game. What I learned from him, I still do today. There's just so many things I still do today. He taught me everything I know about the game of basketball. And we stay in touch, if not weekly, almost every couple of weeks we touch base. And he keeps up with my teams. I asked him to present me at the Hall of Fame. That probably sums it up. And I told him, I said, well, Coach, if you're not going to do it, I guess I'll get the second best person, Michael Jordan. And he got a kick out of that.
Back in March, that you're supposed to sit by the phone. I'm about through. I met so many of you. I snuck in there and took a picture with Gail Goodrich last night and Casey Jones. I'm going to get there. I'll tell you, this is a wonderful group of people, and I'm so in awe. But let me tell you this. I got by the phone, I was waiting. I never thought the call would come, and when it came, I never thought I'd be here. But it did come, so that I had to pack real quick next day, go to New Orleans Final Four. So I go down, and everything we did, I seemed to be caught between James Worthy and Robert Parrish. We'd go across to the Final Four. Saw Roy Williams play in Syracuse and all those things. Well, we'd be walking along here, and Chief is here. Here I am, and here's James. And it was, hey, Chief. Hey, Chief. And then it was, hey, James. Hey, James. I get back home, and my wife, she said, honey, did anybody know you down there? I said, not only did they not know me, they never saw me. But James, Robert, look right up there. We're all up there together, and I'm glad I was between you. Thank you all so very much.
Well, I was aching for this game ever since we lost. I mean, I wanted Houston, and tonight was a big night. I was earlier feeling kind of bad, but I still wanted this game, and I came out, and we all came out wanting to play, but also wanting to win this one.
You know, you got to be able to play different styles of ball games. There was a game earlier when you got out physical. It was physical tonight, but you guys were ready.
Right, it was very physical. A lot of cheap shots being thrown, but we handled our business very well.
Lori, as a basketball player, you did some things differently. This was probably one of the finest defensive players I've ever seen. Whoever the best player was on the other team, you had him.
Well, initially, my freshman year was difficult adjusting to it, but halfway through my freshman season, I realized that my teammates and the coaches felt that I was capable of doing the job, and I took it as a compliment and took pride in what I was doing, and that made it a lot easier.
I think for me, personally, you know, every year he wants us to sit down and make goals for ourselves. The only goals that I've made for myself this year is to play as hard as I can, to work as hard as I can, and to give everything that I have. So at the end of this year, when I finally put my gym shoes up for the final time, I'll know that I gave everything that I had to give, and I left everything on the court.
The only way you're going to get better is you get out here and you play with your heart. You know, you got to want it. And like I was telling Shaka, you know, I don't want to be hard on her or anything, but hey, she was blocking my shot this summer. I mean, so she was taking me to the hoop. And everybody has them games. I done had a lot of them, and I thought there's going to be many more games like that. But, you know, that's something we have to work on. And yes, I really do believe you have to play with heart. You have to love it.
It was truly incredible. It's like a dream come true. You know, I never thought that I'll be hanging aside Benny Slace and Teresa Weatherspoon, Kim Mulkey, some of the great players that played the game, you know, and it's just a great honor.
Seconds. That'll do it. The Lady Techsters have won it. And aren't they happy? First ever NCAA Women National Champions. The Lady Techsters from Louisiana Tech.
1 second remains. Auburn trails by 2.
There's a lot of great things, and a lot of great people that came through here, and in some way, I said it best with a statue. the value that the Lady Techsters had. We were named the team of the decade in the 80s. You hate for people to forget how good they really were during that era, and maybe history will help with that.